Welcome to the Bothell City Council meeting of September 18th, 2018. We have Boy Scout Troop 651 here to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So will you guys go ahead and come on up? And please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, so first thing on the agenda is the roll call. Everybody's here except Councilmember McCullough, who's absent and excused. Meeting agenda approval. Is there any changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none. Review of the projected agenda. Anything there? Crickets. Okay. Review of public engagement opportunities. Let's see, the citywide bike plan. I do love the big construction Arizona sign that you come into the city on Beardsley. I laughed pretty hard when I saw that. But there's a bike plan open house Wednesday, September 19th from 5:30, starts at 5:30 p.m., goes till midnight. City Hall on Wednesday, September 26th, 5:30 p.m. That one goes till 1 o'clock at night. Is that right? At Frank Love Elementary. The next one is salmon season at North Creek, Sunday, September 23rd, 10 a.m. at North Creek. Visit our website for more information. Beardsley Boulevard, 185th Street Northeast Crosswalk ribbon cutting, Thursday, October 4th at 10 a.m. at the corner of Beardsley Boulevard and 185th. Bothell Underground Beer Festival, Saturday, October 6th, 12 to 6 p.m. in the City Hall parking garage. Bus Rapid Transit Workshop. Sound Transit will host 2 public meetings on Monday, October 8th, UW Bothell North Creek Event Center from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Receive updates and help shape Bus Rapid Transit on State Route 522 and Northeast 145th Street. Visit their website, soundtransit.org, for other locations and more information. Oh, you have one. Okay. Councilmember or Deputy Mayor?
I have a council conversation at the Bothell Library on September 30th at 2 o'clock.
Okay. Next, we have special presentations. The first one is well, actually, there's 2 proclamations, so I'll come down to the podium. That's not yours. That's way too long. Okay, there we go. All right, the first proclamation is designating September 24th through September 30th as Diaper Need Awareness Week in Bothell, Washington. Whereas diaper need, the condition of not having sufficient supply of clean diapers to ensure that infants and toddlers are clean, healthy, and dry can adversely affect the health and welfare of infants and toddlers. And whereas the national survey report that 1 in 3 families experience diaper need at some point within the first 3 years of an infant's life. And whereas the average infant or toddler requires an average of 50 diapers changes per week. And whereas there are no government assistance programs for the purchase or provision of diapers. And whereas a monthly supply of diapers can cost as much as 6% of a full-time minimum wage earner's salary, and whereas childcare and early education programs generally require a supply of diapers in order for an infant or toddler to participate. And whereas the people of Bothell recognize that addressing diaper need can lead to economic opportunity, improved health for families and their communities. And now, therefore, I, Andrew Rayam, the Mayor of the City of Bothell, do hereby proclaim week of September 24th through September 30th as Diaper Needs Awareness Week in the City of Bothell, and encourage our citizens to donate generously to diaper banks, diaper drives, and organizations that distribute diapers to families in need. And we have Tim Schmidt here. They want to have a couple words to add to the proclamation?
Sure. Members of the Bothell City Council and members of the audience, I, Tim Schmidt, member of EBC, Eastside Baby Corner Board of Directors, am speaking today on behalf of the organization. Thank you for presenting the proclamation in honor of Diaper Need Awareness Week. Nationally, 1 in 3 families struggle with diaper need. Diapers costing about $80 per month per baby. There's no state or federal child safety net program which allocates dollars specifically for the purchase of diapers. Not having a regular supply of diapers is a challenge for struggling families who are required to supply them for child care so that they can go to work or school. And babies who remain too long in a soiled diaper are exposed to a potential health risk. EBC's mission directly addresses this need. Through a network of agency partners, EBC provides hundreds of children with diapers and much more at no cost to the family or our agency partner. The tangible goods, like diapers, that EBC provides promote and protect developing bodies and minds. Their risks from stress is decreased and their health improved. Kids are safer, better able to learn, and at reduced risk for child abuse and neglect. With basic needs met and their stress lowered, families are able to participate longer and more successfully in programs and are better able to safeguard the health and well-being of their children. Partners such as Friends of Youth or HopeLink can order almost anything a child from birth to age 12 need to thrive, from car seats to a kit of clothing, from formula to pack-and-play beds, from toys to books, for families in their program. In 2017, EBC provided 29,255 diaper changes for Bothell children. Overall, in 2017, EBC helped over 400 Bothell children. Last year, all of EBC provided over 955,000 diaper changes, part of a $4.5 million distribution, helping 12,510 children have what they need when they need it. Founded 28 years ago, EBC, Eastside Baby Corner, provides necessities to kids through nearly 200 sites and programs from 50 agency partners across our 4-county service area. We do through one of our 3 hubs, including EBC North Shore and Kenmore. And EBC is not only a place that helps kids, it is a place where you can help kids. Volunteers are the heart of EBC, and many of the goods EBC gives out are donated by the community. EBC carefully purchases other goods to ensure every order of health and safety essentials, like diapers, is fulfilled. Thank you for your many years of support of EBC and tonight for recognizing National Diaper Needs Awareness Week through this proclamation.
Thank you. Okay, one more proclamation designating September 17th through the 23rd, 2018 National Pollution Prevention Week in Bothell, Washington. Hey, I better sign this. This is for real. There we go. Whereas in the United States Environmental Protection Agency acknowledges National Pollution Prevention Week in honor of the United States Congress passing the Pollution Prevention Act in 1990. Whereas the Pollution Prevention Act encourages pollution prevention by reducing or eliminating waste at the source by modifying production processes, promoting the use of non-toxic or less toxic substances, implementing conservation techniques, and reusing materials rather than putting them into the waste stream. And whereas the city council's environmental goal is to protect the natural environment through integrated natural resources management, and whereas the city of Bothell is a leader in implementing programs and processes to prevent pollution, such as, but not limited to, local source control business audits, food service, fats, oils, and grease inspections, solid waste, recycling and compost, surface water programs like natural yard care. And whereas these services are provided by a diverse workforce with a variety of backgrounds and experience levels that share a common goal of protecting public health and the environment by reducing or eliminating pollutants or contaminants from entering the waste stream or the environment, including our wetlands, streams, lakes, and rivers. And so, and now, therefore, I, Andy Ray, the Mayor of the City of Bothell, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through the 23rd, 2018, as National Pollution Prevention Week in the City of Bothell, Washington, and call upon all citizens to protect natural resources by reducing and eliminating sources of pollution. It's a long one.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
Do you have some words?
The only words I will say, as the proclamation was probably more than long enough, is only rain down the storm drain. Thank you.
Yeah, That'll be next year. Do that short. Okay, next we have Claudia Balducci, King County Councilmember. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council. I really appreciate your giving me a little bit of time. I do like to come visit cities in my district at least once a year to report on things going on at King County. As I think I may have said when I was here before, I represent District 6 of King County, and there are precisely 2 precincts in the city of Bothell that are also in District 6. Most of your city is in District 1, so you probably see more of Councilmember Dembowski than you do of me. But I am just really delighted to have Bothell as part of my district so that I get to have the experience of a little bit thinking about north of the lake and not just east of the lake. The rest of my district is mostly places like Kirkland, Redmond, Bellevue, and Mercer Island. If I may just give a quick update on things that are going on. There's a lot of work on transportation. I know you know that this is one of the most pressing issues that we have. I am the chair of the King County Council's Mobility Committee. I also serve on the Sound Transit Board. And a few things going on. I think you may have heard that Metro is in a process evaluating restructuring routes across the 520 bridge. This is partially in response to the closure of the downtown transit tunnel to buses in Seattle, which is happening in 2019 in March. This will mean that some of the buses that cross 520 now don't have a really reliable trip through downtown Seattle, and so they're looking at ways to deal with that. That might include truncating some of the routes, like the 255 from Kirkland and some of the Sound Transit routes at the UW. The problem is exacerbated by the fact that the WashDOT construction on the western end of 520 is going to result in closure of the Montlake Flyer stop there, also in March of 2019. I raise this to you all because it presents a bit of an opportunity. If Metro decides and Sound Transit decides to truncate buses there, there will be bus hours that become available that could be used to provide broader local service on the east side to feed into the regional system. So I wanted you to be aware of that planning effort. If Metro or Sound Transit hasn't reached out to you, I would be happy to facilitate contact on that topic. You're probably keenly aware of the planning that's going on at both Sound Transit and Metro for bus rapid transit on the 522 corridor. I was pleased to see that there's a meeting being held. I think that they don't think that I represent Bothell, so I don't hear about these things. I'm really glad that you did. Metro Connects, the long-range plan for Metro, also includes a rapid ride line to be built to be served across 522 in this area. They did announce the first 5 routes that there's 26 new rapid ride routes in this plan, and they've announced the first 5 that they're going to seek funding for. I have heard from some Bothell folks that there's concern about the Bothell route not being one of the first 5, and I talked to Metro about that. They said they're happy to come and do a briefing or to speak to you all about sort of the timing and what they're planning to do, because I know that 522 is your lifeline here. So again, if there's anything I can do to help you in that regard, even though it's not necessarily my part of the district, I'm happy to do so. You may have seen fare enforcement and access has been in the news lately. King County instituted a new fare enforcement program. We just voted on this yesterday because of an audit that we received that showed that we were putting an awful lot of resources into very, very little collection. Less than 3% of the citations that our fare enforcement officers were giving out were being paid, and the ones that went to collection, very few of those were even being paid. So, but the impact of who was getting cited was extremely disproportionate and disparate. So we've come up with a new process that we think will be more effective at making sure people pay, but also that they're not getting kicked off the bus for not being able to pay, that we find a way to help people who just need to use the service and don't have money. And on access, access is the service that Metro provides for people with disabilities who need special Metro service. And we're going out for an RFP for that service because the contract is up. We had a number of people come to the council and talk about situations where the access service was hard to use and or there were problems. And so we asked the department to take a timeout, which they did. They worked with a stakeholder group. They've upgraded some of the requirements in the RFP, and that should be going out shortly, and you should be seeing that in the next year or so, the new service online. Speaking of fares, both Metro and Sound Transit have been simplifying their fare structures over the last year in anticipation of the upgrade to the Orca card system that needs to happen in the early 2020s. As part of that, Metro simplified their fares, took out the distance charge to make it simpler, which resulted in a 25-cent fare decrease for your riders, so that worked out nicely. Sound Transit, doing the same process, was proposing a 50-cent fare increase, and I was successful in asking them to delay that because we don't need to do it now. We need to do it when the Orca card, new Orca generation comes online. So effectively a temporary 25-cent fare decrease. One of the most happy and joyous parts of my job is serving as chair of the group overseeing the development of the East Side Rail Corridor. This is the former BNSF rail line on the east side of Lake Washington. And we've now got 2 new openings. There's been a trail opening from the Cross Kirkland corridor down through Bellevue, and another one from Factoria all the way to Renton. Ultimately, this will be an amazing part of the regional trail network that will connect up to a system that goes all the way around Lake Washington. So it's a really nice amenity for all of us. Just a couple more things. Is part of the Sound Transit expansion, a lot of people may not be aware of this, but there is something called the Puget Sound Taxpayer Accountability Account, or PASTA. Somebody named it down at King County. And this is, it's basically a sales tax replacement fee that was in the state authorization for ST3. The money gets paid by the agency into a fund. The fund gets authorized by the counties that receive it, and it can only be used for educational purposes. We anticipate receiving $318 million over the course of the ST3 project through this fund. I know, it's kind of a really well-kept secret, but we have been working on early phase. We adopted some policies around what to do with the money because it doesn't start to come in until really ST3 construction starts in earnest. But we have, the council made a policy statement that we want to use it for early learning, K through 12, and community and technical colleges. Education is a new area for the county. We don't do education, and so we have hired a consultant to help us work with stakeholders to develop a plan for spending this money. And again, it's something to be aware of. Local technical and community colleges have been heavily engaged, so has the early learning community, and we should take up the results of the consultant's presentation in October. Yesterday, you may have heard that we passed a plan for another future funding source, which is the lodging tax that starts to come in 2021. I am happy to answer any questions about that, but I've been all over the news with it. What we ended up doing was we used tourism money to pay for upgrades to the Public Facilities District that owns the Safeco Field. We put $165 million extra dollars into affordable housing and some starter money for tourism. I guess I'll end on housing. It's obviously one of the most pressing issues that all of us face. The rising cost of housing make it difficult for all of our constituents to live and to live where they want to live. We found that more than 100,000 low-income households in King County are severely cost-burdened, which means they spend more than 50% of their income on housing costs. That means they are very much at risk of becoming homeless. So it's really a crisis throughout King County. Starting about this time last year, I and some of my colleagues convened a regional affordable housing task force made up of 12 elected officials, including 4 from the Sound Cities Association. And we have been working on recommendations for a regional approach to try to assist cities in addressing the housing crisis that we're all experiencing. They're pretty detailed. I won't go into them right here, but we do have a website, and I'd be happy to share all of the details with you. You're well represented by Mayor Baker of Kenmore, who's my co-chair on that task force. This is a budget year. We'll be setting our budget for the next 2 years. There are always opportunities for grants at King County. We have a number of programs that we do. We have active sports grants, some small things that come through the council. We always have a van program. Our van pool vans, when they are required by law to be retired, still have a lot of life in them. So if there's ever anything that I can do from my office to help with priorities at the city, I hope you will reach out to me. And I was really delighted because I took my bike up here today. I was really delighted to hear that you're making a bike plan, so maybe I'll give some input to that. After I bike out of here, I took the bus here, so I'm going to bike to Kirkland next. Anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you again for a little time on your agenda tonight.
Oh, thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have a quick question for you. How's your budgeting process going? Because there's a lot of counties and cities that are struggling with pretty big gaps and closing the gap for 18 and getting ready for 1920.
Right. You know, ours is okay. It looks okay going into 19 and 20 because we had some revenue that came in higher than we thought it would. We lost some revenue, we gained some revenue, and we haven't seen the county executive's proposed budget yet, but I hear it's got about 18 million in efficiencies, but, you know, cuts. But that's on a biennial budget of $11 billion, so it's pretty small. It looks worse in the out years, 2021, 2022.
Your biennial budget's $11 billion?
$11 billion.
Wow.
Yes. Keeping in mind that all your solid waste, all the pipes that take away the wastewater, all the buses, you know, we have a very big government with a lot of infrastructure.
And King County is the biggest government in the state, basically, other than the
True,
state.
and the
Actually,
13th biggest county in the country.
okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. Does anybody else have any questions? None? Wow, you guys are quiet.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Have a good, safe ride.
Thanks.
Oh, wait, do you have one? Councilmember McNeil?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Claudia, thank you for your support of our area here. I know you have a small portion, but it means a lot when we work across the aisle regionally, so thank you very much for your support.
You're welcome. I find it's helpful to have two county council members that care about your city, and I'm happy to be one of them. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is Council Committee City Manager reports. Is there any city manager reports? No. Council, Deputy Mayor?
I have three. Transportation Policy Board released the draft of the 2019-2022 Regional Transportation Improvement Program for public comment. There are 377 projects on that TIP. 6.4 billion leverages 25.6 billion in total project costs. We had a discussion of federal performance targets and a presentation from Snohomish County on Preservation and Maintenance Program. And they are happy to work with cities within Snohomish County to, I guess, gain some cost efficiencies if we have projects that we could combine with theirs. On the East Side Transportation Partnership, we had a presentation about the new e-bike policy use and trends with WashDOT and Cascade Bicycle Club. I think something was passed in the state that talks about the different classes of e-bikes and just defines what they are and helps kind of lay out some restrictions. And then we had a presentation on the roadmap to Washington's future by Ruckelhaus. They were hired by the state, or I should say by the legislature, to do basically an assessment of local GMA planning and land use. And I think I attended a workshop on Saturday with local electeds from cities and states. They've done, I think, 50 of these workshops in Washington State, discussing what's working, what's not working, specifically around the Growth Management Act. So I would encourage, there are two more, I think, this fall, so I would encourage my fellow council members to attend. It was a really, really interesting discussion. I learned a lot from other city leaders about the impacts of GMA on them and possible solutions. So that's it for my reports.
Councilmember Agnew?
Yeah, we had my final EMS levy meeting today. The EMS levy is the levy that provides paramedic services in this county. It's a levy that comes up every 6 years, so it's a continuation of this levy. We did some good things. We are probably going to have to increase one medic unit over the next levy span, which is 2019. for 6 years, 2025. So in August, there'll be a vote coming out, and at least I hope people go out and support the Medic One system that we have here. It's probably one of the best Medic One systems in the world. So I hope you support it. It's going to be 27 cents per thousand on assessed value. So it's reasonably priced. And if you're transported by a paramedic in this county, you get no bill. You get no bill for all of that services, which is an oddity in the United States. So I hope for your support. This was my last levy. I've been involved with 3 of them as an elected. And yahoo, I am happy.
Thanks for hanging in there that long. Do you not want to? Okay. This side, you guys have any reports? Okay. All right, so we're on to visitor comment. Each person addressing the council will give his or her name in an audible tone of voice for the record, and unless the council grants further time, shall limit the address to 3 minutes. No person other than the council and the person having the floor will be permitted into any discussion either directly or through a member of council without the permission of the mayor. And have sign-up sheets. Had sign-up sheets. Oh, there's one. I'm struggling with I can't see the handwriting. Okay, whoever signed up the sign, is it Whitney Neubauer? There we go. Whitney, your handwriting. Usually it's much better.
Sorry about that. I thought I was late, and so I was rushing. My name is Whitney Neubauer, resident of Bothell. I've spoken with you guys a few times in the past. I'm now a board member at One Bothell, and I just want to say that I appreciate working with the new Parks Director. It's been a really great experience so far, and I'm really happy that we're here talking about today the last 5 acres on the back 9 and the acquisition there. I know it's been a long road, and so I want to thank everyone at the city for your work on this and your dedication to make it happen. On a personal note, I was just at Lake Sammamish State Park touring some restoration work that's been done there. They have 3 salmon spawning streams on that property, and it's really cool to think about what this place might look like, 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now. So thank you.
All right, thank you. That's the only sign-up sheet I have. Is there anybody else that wanted to give public comment? Go ahead, come up and give your name for the record.
Hi, I'm David Bain. I'm also with One Bothell and would also like to congratulate the staff who put together the plan for finishing the acquisition. I think that it keeps the key elements that the committee or the community wants. There are reservations for trails through the area. There's an area set aside for future development, and it's unfortunate that we'll have to buy the rights to develop and then spend the money to put the building up, but at least we're on the right track there. And it also preserves, or it sets aside riparian buffers along the river and Wainita Creek, and that'll be important to the salmon recovery that Whitney talked about. So I hope you'll, share our congratulations with staff for doing a good job on this, and hope you'll let the purchase go forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Go ahead and give your name for the record at the podium.
Hi, so I'm Lori Dunham, and you need address? Oh. Lori Dunham. I don't know if this is the first time I've looked at the ADU thing, so maybe this is not an appropriate comment, but I noticed that it talks about allowing the home businesses, but one of the sentences says that all the activities of the business have to be conducted in the home, and I just wondered if that would not allow childcare. So just a comment that maybe that wants to be, you might want to look at that again.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to provide public comment? Everybody else is an employee, it looks like, except a couple. All right, we're good? All right, moving on to the consent agenda. No, wait, no, I almost skipped over Paul, the city attorney. We need to go to executive session for potential litigation pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1I for approximately how much time?
About 20 minutes.
About 20 minutes, so we'll be back here at 6:55. All right, the city council is back from executive session. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Councilmember Agnew to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, place your vote. Passes unanimously with Councilmember McAuliffe absent and excused. Next we have, wow, right to the public hearing. Okay. The AB 18-136 accessory dwelling unit public hearing, and I think I need to officially open the public hearing. It hasn't been opened yet. Okay, so I'm officially opening the public hearing. We have a presentation from Mr. Boyd. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. There we go. We're here tonight to take a step forward on our affordable housing agenda that was passed last March. We're dealing tonight with accessory dwelling unit amendments, and this is, we see as the first step of amending our regulations regarding accessory dwelling units. So my presentation tonight will talk a little bit about that foundation in the housing strategy update and work program. We'll talk about the actual code amendments that we're considering tonight to consolidate the ADU regulations in one chapter of the Bothell Municipal Code, to allow carriage house units over garages in rear setbacks abutting alleys, and to allow additional height to accommodate such carriage house type ADUs as well as other two-story ADUs, and to allow home occupations in ADUs. I'm also going to talk a little bit about some of the other ADU issues that we've identified, and there's a study going on that ARCH is leading among the various ARCH communities, and staff from other ARCH jurisdictions are looking at other impediments to ADUs and particularly issues where we might be able to work together to remove some impediments. So that study is going to continue probably to the end of this year. So we will likely have some other amendments that come out of that study on the next year's docket. So just in terms of process, we went through the housing strategy update with nearly a full year of Planning Commission outreach, study sessions, and public hearings. City Council passed that in March, as I said, along with a work program. And what we're doing tonight is really the first piece of that work program that we've tackled and brought to Council for adoption. The work program includes the Planning Commission and Council priorities. It's a 5-year plan, but with a focus on the 2018 tasks. And one of those tasks was addressing impediments to carriage house units, along with other potential ADU issues. So I've included here a couple of illustrations of what I mean by a carriage house unit. It's basically an accessory dwelling unit above a garage, whether above an existing garage or a new garage. So the proposed amendments to remove impediments to carriage houses were necessary because ADUs can't currently be placed in rear setbacks as garages can. So if you have a garage that's on an alley in a rear setback, then you can't build currently you can't build an accessory dwelling unit above that. Also, the 20-foot height limit that we currently have makes it difficult to build over a garage or to build any sort of two-story accessory dwelling unit, particularly given that our code also requires accessory structures to have similar siding, roofing, design and details as the primary structure. So unless you have a flat-roofed house, you're probably going to need more than 20 feet to do a two-story ADU. The carriage house issue was kind of brought to the forefront due to the interest on prospective applicants. And the slide here shows their property. It's a house in the Lower Maywood area with a garage setback 9 feet from the alley, less than the full 15-foot setback. That is allowed for garages. The 9-foot setback allows the required 25 feet from the opposite side of the alley. And these homeowners wanted to put an accessory unit on top of the garage and could not do that under our current code. So they're waiting, hoping for this amendment. Their other options were to build it to the side and set back from the existing garage. But they wanted to preserve that yard that goes along the side of the house, which is on the historic register, and do a smaller footprint intervention on top of the garage. So the proposed amendments allow ADUs over garages in a rear setback when it is abutting an alley, and then they allow additional height for 2-story detached accessory dwelling units with a little extra additional height where you're building above an existing structure, where you don't have the luxury of sizing the first floor to allow minimal height. So basically we went with the regulations that Redmond has successfully implemented, which allow new 2-story structures up to 25 feet, and if you're going over an existing structure, up to 28 feet. Here are the drawings on the bottom of this image of the proposal that for the site we were just looking at. Another example was brought to us. This is Exhibit 2 in your packet. This is a proposed 2-level detached accessory dwelling unit on a lot that has an existing manufactured home. The code amendment would benefit from the additional height allowed here, and it would also, well, the fact that they could build a 2-story structure would enable them to move forward on this project, even though it's a fairly small lot, and it would restrict the footprint so that they could meet the current coverage limits. The lot coverage limits are something that we are going to be looking at, but we're not ready with specific code amendments for you tonight. But the enabling 2-story accessory dwelling units does reduce the footprint. Here's some more images of that proposal where the ADU would go in the backyard of the existing house, and the height would be kept to 22 and just about 22 and a half feet. Another example here. This is a homeowner who wanted to build a carriage house unit, a new carriage house unit, so a new garage with a carriage house above it. They would still be subject to the 5% lot coverage limit for the garage, even though the ADU is not. And we, as I said, we're not proposing any changes to that at this time, but we are going to look at that further. But it does allow 2-story detached ADU as they propose to do. So the issues raised to date, and the ones that we're currently acting on, shown here with check marks, we are proposing to allow ADUs over garages in a rear setback on alleys. We're proposing to allow 2-story detached accessory dwelling units. We are consolidating the ADU provisions in Bothell Municipal Code Chapter 12.14. We're creating a new section in that chapter for those requirements. Currently, they're a footnote in the use table. In the course of doing this, we discovered that there was a requirement that any home occupations be in the primary unit. But previously, we had already allowed the homeowner and ADUs still require home ownership, but we now allow the homeowner to occupy either the primary or the accessory unit. So it didn't seem necessary to limit home occupations to the primary unit. So a few items that we've touched on, but are going to defer until we get more information out of the ARCH study are building and hard surface coverage limits. We're not sure that it's necessary to do that, but this example here, if they were not able to do a two-story carriage house type unit, they could do a single-story garage with a single-story ADU adjacent to it, but they might run into those coverage limits. And then especially when you count for a driveway leading to the garage and a pathway to the unit. We are not, we're studying, but aren't proposing any code amendments yet regarding the use of manufactured or modular homes for ADUs. We have had some interest in that. We aren't proposing at this point any code amendments related to impact fees or utility hookups, but that is one of the issues that's being studied in the ARCH study. And one thing that's come out in that study is that Bothell is one of the few jurisdictions that charges impact fees for ADUs. So that's something that, and that could well be the biggest impediment that we have. And so we are looking at that. There may be an administrative cure for that, but we need to make sure that we're doing that in a way that's that meets code and fiscal requirements. And then other issues that might come up from the ARCH study are being deferred. So that's just to let you know that we will likely be coming back in 2019 with some additional items. So with that, I wanted to officially introduce the letter from the Seattle-King County Realtors in support of this code amendment as Exhibit 3. Open up the floor for questions of staff before you move on to public testimony and action on this. And the action that we're asking for tonight is a motion and vote to approve the amendments subject to adoption when SEPA is completed. We did not get that done in a timely fashion, but the hearing was already noticed, so we decided to go ahead with the hearing. SEPA, the appeal period will be over October 2nd, so we propose to bring it back on consent following that.
Do you mind if we do public comment first and then we'll do questions?
That's fine.
You're all right with that? Okay, good. The first one I have for public comment is Carrie Westerbeck.
Evening, Council. Kerry Westerbeck, citizen of Bothell. Probably have my address by now. I said most of my comments at the Planning Commission public hearing, just in support of this, and want to see widespread carriage house, ADU liberalization around Bothell. So this is a great start, and I would urge you to forward this on and vote for it, and look hopefully open-minded at all the further things I propose that ARCH brings to you and that Dave continues to look at. So I'm very in favor of this, and I hope we take it further and start looking at even more things that would build more ADUs and maybe allow one in the house and one on the site for a total of 3, things like that. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to provide public comment? Go ahead, come up to the dais, or sorry, podium and give your name.
Hi, it's Louise Dickens, and I'm actually the owner of that exhibit too. And I just want to make sure that you understand the reasoning behind why we want to do that 2 stories, not only for the lot coverage, but we have a manufactured home and it's an older home. We want to have a place that we can stay if we want to take that home out and build another house there. And so it's going to serve more than just the purpose of having a place for me to live while I have my children and or my daughter and my grandkids in the mobile home. So I just wanted to say one of the other factors too that Dave just briefly touched on is the way it's going to look. I'm not putting metal siding on an ADU. I like a trailer house. I would rather put, hardy plank on it and make it a nice place. So that's one of the other factors that we talked about, is making the structure look just like what's existing. In this case, I'll ask for a variance if I have to, but I obviously want it to look nicer than that. So, but thank you for taking the time to look at all this.
Is there anybody else that would like to provide public comment? Seeing nobody. All right, let's move into council questions of staff. Do we have any questions? Deputy Mayor.
I always wait just to see if someone else wants to go first. So thank you for the presentation. I think this is a great first step. I had a couple questions. The two-story detached units, what are the setbacks for the detached units that aren't on an alley?
They're the same as for primary structures, so minimum 5-foot side setback, minimum combined 10 feet, typically 15 feet rear setback in most of our single-family zones.
So potentially, if you're on a fence line and you just go 5 foot past, and then you could have a two-story structure overlooking someone's backyard. So that's kind of one of the...
Yeah, similar. I mean, you could do the primary structure, 2 stories on the 5-foot setback as well.
And then for the home occupancy, so did you answer the question that Ms. Dunham had?
Yes. I forgot to mention in my presentation, and I did talk to them after their comment. Childcare has its own set of rules that trump essentially trump the other home occupation rules. So they're regulated in a different section of the code, and they are allowed, and in fact, I believe the state requires them to have outdoor play area, so they would be able to do that.
And then my last question was just trying to look at potential, I guess, problems or issues. Would it be possible if a homeowner association passed some rule in their, I forget what they're called, CRCs, for them to, they couldn't, a homeowners association couldn't block the building of accessory dwelling units, could they?
They could.
They could.
Yes, they can adopt rules that are more restrictive than the city's rules. They can adopt rules that are more liberal or more that allow uses that the city rules don't allow. So they do, and that's, I think, something that the ARCH study is going to be looking at, is to what extent homeowners associations do have covenants that restrict ADUs in any form, and whether there's what measures we might have to either work with them to remove them where possible, or any other measures we might have to address that.
Okay, I was just, not that I'm for it, I just wondered, how that all worked with homeowners associations. I think that's all my questions. Thanks again. I'm excited to hopefully see at least 3 built relatively soon.
Councilmember Agnew.
Well, thank you, Dave. I just have a question. How many cities our size do not have ADUs? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. I know that 15 years ago there were quite a few cities that didn't allow them at all, and then typically cities like Bothell allowed them, but not detached accessory dwelling units. And a lot of cities had very restrictive, as Bothell did, very restrictive size limitations relative to the size of the primary structure. We addressed some of those issues in 2014, I believe it was, when we first allowed detached accessory dwelling units and removed some of the size restrictions. We did though, retain an overall size restriction of 800 square feet because we are doing this at least partly, and I'd say largely, as a way of providing an affordable housing option. So we want to keep them relatively small size so that they remain relatively affordable.
Thank you. Yeah, I think for the affordable housing for children with special needs that you want to keep around, to senior citizens like myself that you want to keep around, I think it has a lot of options. Nice job on this, Dave.
Thanks.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation, Dave. I know you had mentioned we deferred the modular home piece of this. Has there been any discussion about, like, and I think you mentioned a little bit about the temporary, bringing it in and let it sit for a little bit and then take it out? Has that been discussed? And the reason I ask that question is because in Kenmore, near the Bothell, or near the Kenmore Library, I've noticed a couple tiny homes that have appeared on lots. I was just curious if is that something that we're looking at? I know you talked about modular, but somebody creates a pad, a concrete pad, they bring in this tiny home, let it sit there for a while, and they take it out.
Our code currently allows modular homes as ADUs, or actually for that matter as a primary structure. But there are certain impediments. The requirement that accessory structures have similar siding, detailing, roofing, and materials as the primary structure can be one. And that's one that the Planning Commission, they were a bit split, but did indicate some interest in tackling that in the next round. But our building code requires that those modular units be attached to permanently attached to a foundation. So you can't just roll in a tiny home and roll it off under our code.
Okay, and in the examples that you're showing here, I think this is a two-story dwelling unit, has no garage.
This one would not, but the code does require one additional parking space if you build an ADU. And this particular site has adequate parking to meet the three that would be required for the primary residence plus one.
And that, excuse me, that additional parking is required to be on-site, or it can be street parking?
It's required on-site. We do have provisions for off-site parking with a covenant, but you have to show you can't use on-street parking to.
You cannot use on-street parking.
You could use some other off-street parking on an adjacent lot within a certain radius if you've got a contract with that property owner to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Zorns.
Quick question. Excellent questions and excellent presentation. So my question's really short. I was thinking about alleys here in Bothell. Are most of our alleys in Lower Maywood, or do we have another, high density use of alleys? I couldn't bring any up to memory.
Most of them are in Lower Maywood. I haven't done an exhaustive search, but I think that's a fair.
Okay, I was just trying to inventory who all it would impact, and that's what I landed on too. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Olson.
Very specific, kind of in the weeds question. So you're talking about 800 square feet, and I see there's a mention in here that if the accessory unit is completely located on a single floor, the director may allow increased size in order to efficiently use all floor area. So maybe if it's like the existing garage is 900 square feet, would there be a possibility of putting a second story that's 900?
Yes, and that does require a special determination by the director, but and it was really intended for a couple of situations. If you happen to have a garage with a loft space that could be converted to for example, say this was a existing structure, that had that loft space, and then they wanted to convert it to an accessory unit, and it was a little over 800 square feet. This would be an avenue for that. Or if you have a daylight basement and that's 1,000 square feet, and it doesn't really make sense to carve 200 square feet out of that just to keep it at 800 square feet, this would allow for that sort of thing. It doesn't allow you to build a new situation, create a situation where you can have a larger unit, but if you've got an existing situation that lends itself to a slightly larger unit, you can.
All right, thank you.
All right, so parking's been covered. I was gonna make sure, but I just double checked this out. It's there. It's good. So, Dave, are these? So let's say like that one you showed where there's a driveway and the thing's 900 square feet. And you're getting pretty close to the stormwater requirements. I'm just curious, would they be required to meet stormwater requirements if they build an ADU with a big driveway like that? Example.
Yes, they would, under any circumstance. And that's one reason we've deferred any consideration of modifying the lot coverage and impervious surface coverage requirements for this sort of thing, is that we really need to look at the stormwater issues much more carefully.
Yeah, because the picture of that one from the side or whatever looked like it was down in the bottom there, so the water's going to go. I don't know. Just make sure that we don't flood people in an effort to try to make accessory dwelling units a good thing. The other thing was is there anything about window placement or anything we could do? I mean, most neighbors are neighborly, but sometimes you might have a neighbor that'll build a sliding door with a deck that looks right into your backyard from his accessory dwelling unit. Just is there anything we have that can avoid or restrict that kind of?
We have done that in some sections of our code, and it did come up in the Planning Commission discussions, but I think it was decided to defer that to the next round, because I think that's one issue that the Arch Group is going to be looking at is whether they're, what other jurisdictions have done in terms of trying to control the privacy issue, and so we just didn't really feel like we were quite ready to draft that language yet. So.
Okay, cool. That'd be good to bring back just in case. You never know. Some people may have they'd just be uncomfortable to have somebody hanging out looking down into your backyard. The other thing too, you mentioned, and I do support this, is looking at utility fee discounts or something like that, but it has to be some sort of covenant that it will be used for low-income housing, not just
If there was a covenant, then we would be able to exempt them from the fees. Without a covenant, and we're not proposing a covenant at this point, we need to look at exactly how other jurisdictions are waiving those fees, whether they've actually tested that legally that is valid. They are accessory to the primary use, so that's one sort of theory that the primary structure pays the impact fee and the accessory structure doesn't have to, but we need to do some further research into whether that, or and the other option is that the jurisdiction has to basically cover those fees themselves if they don't charge them.
Oh yeah, like the county fee. We'd have to pay the county.
Well, it'd be the impact fees, our own impact fees.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like connection charges, like King County has their own.
Yeah, and then that's another one we're looking into with the group about whether we can put in the code some provisions that utilities cannot require separate meters. That's another significant cost and impediment. But it's a challenge in a jurisdiction like Bothell, where you've got 3 different utilities that are somewhat independent, and whether Bothell can actually impose that kind of requirement on Alderwood or North Shore.
So. I forgot about that complexity.
So,
okay. I think everybody had a chance for questions. Do you want to do another round, or are we good? Is there a motion? Oh, wait, we need a preliminary approval. Approve recommended actions. Okay. So we don't need to continue this public hearing till, I thought we always do that.
You don't need to. Our recommendation is that you close the public hearing and do the preliminary approval, and then we'll bring it back. We propose bringing it back on consent.
Okay.
Once the SEPA process is complete.
Okay. So is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilmember Agnew. There we go. The usual duo. Any discussion on the motion? Go ahead, place your vote. Passes unanimously with Councilmember McAuliffe absent and excused. Is there a motion to preliminary approve the recommended action?
So moved.
Second.
So it's moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilmember Agnew to preliminary approve the proposed ordinance contained in Attachment 3, amending code provisions relating to the ADUs. Any discussion on the motion? Do we need to do anything about bringing it back? We're okay. Sadness? Never mind. Any discussion on the motion? None. Place your vote. Passes unanimously with Councilmember McAuliffe absent and excused. So we're done there. Yep, we're done. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is AB 18-137, the 2017-2018 results of operations, fifth and sixth quarter budget status report and 2019-20 biennial revenue estimate memorandum. And we have the city manager to give us presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm presenting to you tonight 2 quarterly reports. Normally, the 5th quarter report would have come to you in the April-May timeframe, but due to some challenges with the implementation of our software system and some other operational challenges, the report was delayed, and so I apologize for that delay. It should normally come to you in a much more timely fashion. But we've completed the 6th quarter report at the same time, and so we're bringing them together this evening for your consideration and review. As you read in the report, we are having some challenges, specifically in our general fund. The other funds, we have several proprietary funds, things like utility fund, Safe Streets and Sidewalks fund at the moment, are doing fine. They're strong and they have good fund balances. But our general fund and our asset replacement fund, which is something we've been talking about for a couple of years now, are strained, and we continue to have challenges, especially with our general fund revenue and expenses. In May, the finance director presented a report that was the 4th quarter report ending December 31st, 2017. At that time, we had a $9 million general fund reserve. If you recall, we transferred about $8 million from the sale of the proceeds from the sale of several properties in the downtown into the general fund reserve to bolster that reserve. It's an appropriate place for those monies to sit, but they are really designated for other uses, not general operating uses. And unfortunately, in 2018, we're having to dip into that fund to pay just our regular ongoing general operating expenses. So that's where the concern is coming from. It is important to remember that part of our financial strategy that was put in place many years ago as part of this whole downtown redevelopment was to sell the properties and use the proceeds of those sales as a mechanism to pay the lease payments on this building. Because 4 of the properties haven't sold, 3 of which are contaminated, and the sale of those properties has been extended out longer than we anticipated, we are feeling some pressure on the general fund to be able to make those lease payments. They total $3.2 million each year. What we're working on is to be able to use REIT monies rather than general fund monies. However, those REIT monies were identified for other uses, and so we've got some challenges to look at and to preserve our general fund reserve. The bad news is, at the end of the 6th quarter, we now have an operating deficit of $3.2 million. That means our revenues have come in lower than projected, and our expenses are higher than projected when the budget was put together a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years ago. There's a couple reasons for that. So in the fourth quarter report that you received in May of this year, there were a couple things that were shared. One is we had some revenue shortfalls, but they were basically returns on two utilities that we pay, one on cell phone utilities, and the other one was on a sales tax. Audits occur all the time. It's normal course of business. Where are those revenues coming from? Who are they being delegated to? There was an audit done, and so it was determined that the city received revenues that it shouldn't have from the cell phone provider, the cell phone tax, and from some sales tax. That totaled almost $800,000. We also entered into several labor contracts during 2017, one of which was almost 2 years out of contract and required a large amount of retroactive pay, and that wasn't included in the budget. Although we knew it was coming, it wasn't budgeted in the 2017-2018 budget. And then there were some speculative revenues that were put into the 2017-2018 budget by the interim city manager, and some expenses that truly were unavoidable expenses and really needed to be included in the budget. And so basically, based on that information and just the revenue shortfalls, we pretty much started out 2017 $1.8 million in the hole. By February, March, April, we were already in a deficit. And so we've been struggling sort of through that in the recent months. We had hoped that revenues we'd have some surplus revenues in 2018, and those haven't materialized. And so we're now looking at this deficit that we need to address. We're looking at some strategies. I will be bringing the 2019-2020 proposed budget to you on October 9th and 16th. It'll be a discussion about where we are, some budget strategies, and the opportunity to take a look at our expenditures and to provide some guidance as to where we potentially can have some cost savings, but to also look at some additional revenue options. Quite frankly, our expenses are outpacing our revenues. And this is a structural problem, and it needs to be fixed now. And so this is an opportunity to highlight this issue, let you know that we're taking it very seriously. I've done things like put a hiring chill on at this time, so looking at every position and any discretionary positions I'm not filling at this point. We're already looking around the organization for cost efficiencies, but this is not an easy gap for us to close with just the couple months that I have to be able to do that. So it's already September, and these minor adjustments will make a difference, but cannot close a $3.2 million gap. So we will look for some cost savings. We will look at using other funds aside from general funds, but you will have to dip into the general fund reserve to balance the 2017-2018 budget. The challenge with that is it makes very little, if not any, money available in 2019-2020 available for your budget as we put that together. We really have to protect that general fund reserve. So I've attached the fifth quarter and the sixth quarter reports. I also attached the fourth quarter report just to remind you of the information that you were provided back in May. And the last document is required as part of state law to provide you with our 2019-2020 revenue estimate projection. So there's a memorandum that's attached. There's no action required, but it is required that we bring that to you so that you have a forecast of what we're projecting for revenues for the upcoming biennium. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, and the Deputy Director is also here if you have questions for us.
Okay, who would like to go first? I guess we don't have any comment. Oh, come on now. Well, I guess I could go first. Pretty upset. It's unfortunate we didn't get this information sooner, so we had time to address it before we have to dip into the reserves. I think everybody knows, well, the listening public might not know, but cities and counties, they do not carry deficits. That we will balance the budget one way or another. So I wish, again, we had more time to deal with this. I appreciate getting us up to speed. So just out of curiosity, though, you said that we should have had that report about expenses What were the dates that they're typically supposed to be delivered?
The fifth quarter is for January, February, March, and you should have received it around the end of April, sometime in May. It does take some time to finalize the numbers for those 3 months, so it doesn't come immediately after the end of that fifth quarter, but appropriately would have been around the end of April, May.
And so people understand fifth quarter and that type of thing. So how many quarters are in a city's biennial budget?
Eight quarters.
Okay. Just to make sure everybody understands. Fifth quarter is like a TV show after the Seahawks game for most people. So, and so the reasoning behind why we haven't received that information?
There's a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is the council authorized a new financial software system, and that's a major lift for the staff to be able to do. So we've been using a system that's, I think, 15, 17 years old. And so as we put data in, we have to double verify that data. They're working to make the shift over. And so to be able to get all the new data in the new system as the new system's been being implemented, that was part of the challenge. There were also some operational challenges that occurred that I'm dealing with. And so it was just late.
Okay. And the last thing is, so the budget we are going to have brought forward in October, it'll obviously rectify the structural imbalance in our budget?
So I hope to have a bit more information for you as part of the presentation, so you know some of the strategies that we're trying to put in place and what we've been able to hopefully address, if we've been able to find some other revenues and been able to reduce that deficit by some amount. I hope to have that information to you by the 9th. What we're mostly focusing on, because it's important that you understand where your general fund reserve balance is as we start the next budget years, but mostly we'll be focusing on 2019, 2020. And I'll be sharing with you basically where we are, what the departments are asking for, and putting together a list to help provide me with direction on what services you think maybe we can do without, some things that we could suspend for 2 years, and really looking for some policy direction to get a balanced budget presented to you by early December for the 2019-2020 budget.
Okay. One last question. So we put the monies from the sales of the properties into our reserve fund out of a recommendation, I think it was, from the credit rating organization, like Moody's, is that what it's called?
Correct.
And how much money did they say that we needed to have in our reserve?
You should have,
ideally,
best practices is 15%. So we have a $51 million general fund, so we should have about 15 million minimum. We used to have 20, and so I think we'd like to strive to get to 15, but 20 would really be more secure. Part of that allows you to have an economic uncertainty fund so that if there is a recession, you don't have to right away react and start cutting services and positions. You can ride a small recession if you have additional monies in your general fund.
And could you explain to the public how we went from 20 million down to 9, and then we boosted it back up with, how did we get from 20 million to 9? It was before your time, but
we actually went from 20%, 20 million down to 1.6. And what you did is you used general fund reserves through the recession. So many cities across America cut services and cut staff. And the administration and council during the recession made the decision to utilize other monies, including the general fund reserve, rather than cut positions and cut services. And so you made it through that recession with some concessions by staff, but mostly being able to hang on to all the services and use your general fund reserve to do that. And so your savings account basically went down to 1.6 million. And since we are looking potentially at some bonds in the future, that's far too low for a city our size. And so we moved over the 8 million from the proceeds from the sale of the properties to bolster that general fund reserve up.
And we're still going to need those to pay the lease payments on this building.
We can pay the lease payments through the REIT monies because it is a capital facility, and so you can use REIT to make those payments. However, those were programmed for other capital projects, so you're sort of taking, then there's certain capital projects we're not going to be able to do if we're going to use those REIT monies. So we had planned on using REIT, I think it's 2028 when we thought that we were going to utilize all of the proceeds from the sale of the properties. So we were trying to write out a large chunk of the time of the repayments. But that now is until we can sell the properties, we're looking at how to pay those payments through other sources.
And so I know there was a capital, I've got a lot of questions, sorry. The capital facilities plan that was presented to a committee of the council.
Correct.
That was assuming the REIT money was not going to be used to pay, because they established a 2-year capital improvement plan.
That's
so is that
correct.
going to come to the council amended? So it's, okay.
Yes,
Just want
it
to make
is.
sure we're not okay.
Unfortunately, yes. The committee looked at it in a window of time where we were unaware of the magnitude of our deficit. And so even though the committees looked at it, we're not going to reconvene the committee. We as staff are looking at some options, and then we would present those to the council when we present the CFP to you.
Do we see anything between now and the end of the year that was discretionary that we could, as a council, decide not to pay for? Are you guys looking at those options for whatever we can do as a council to just spend no more money, basically, to do our part?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Who would like to go next? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you for opening. Give me some time to put my thoughts together. Obviously, this is very concerning. My stomach did some flips. So can you tell me what's the overall biennial budget? Is it 200 million? Is it 240? I can't remember the exact number.
It's a little over 228 overall, so that's a 2-year budget. I mean, that's all funds.
So, and then 3.2 is what percentage of 228?
So the 3.2 is only for the general fund. So the general fund is a smaller amount of money. So the reserve, each proprietary fund has its own reserve. So when I talk about other funds being healthier, the utilities funds, other proprietary funds, that's separate. We're talking only about the general fund reserve, and that best practices would have a general fund reserve amount of 15 to 20%.
Okay, I was just wondering what percentage of the overall budget are we off?
So the general fund is about 55 million. And so we have 8 in there, 9 in there now. Although right now, if we did nothing, we'd have to take $3.2 million out of that $9 million reserve and bring it down to 658. So then we're dropping it down again. And so we really want to get to that, and that was the council direction in April when we did your goal setting. You gave us direction to continue to start rebuilding that general fund reserve as well as the asset replacement. And at this point, we're taking from the general fund reserve rather than moving towards rebuilding it.
And asset replacement, what number would be a healthy number for that to be at?
That I don't know yet. I've been working with, I'll be working with the Public Works Department and Finance to identify what the size of that is and what a good healthy balance would be. So basically, you're taking everything that's in our asset replacement and you're identifying how much it costs at some future value to replace that item. And you're putting in, and how long that item, what its useful life is going to be. And so then you say, let's say for a vehicle, that vehicle is useful life of 9 years, and it's going to cost X to replace it. You put in those payments for 9 years, so when the 9 years comes up, you have the money to replace it. That's best practices in asset replacement. And so our fund is not at that level. Monies were taken from it, monies haven't been put into it, and the statement in the staff report is, so when capital purchases come about and there isn't adequate monies in the asset replacement, and they have to be purchased, like the computer systems that are in our fire trucks, that is a non-option. That's $130,000. They must be replaced. And there's no money to do that, and so they'll come out of the general fund ongoing operating revenues. And that's a challenge for us. So there should have been, when those computers went into those fire trucks, they should have been added to the asset replacement, and we should have been making payments toward their replacement. And now that they need to be replaced, the money would be there. And instead, we'll have to take out $130,000 out of ongoing revenues to cover those in 2019.
Yeah, I guess I kind of equate it to, in my household budget, we don't buy cars on credit. We save up the cash and then buy them with cash, and that's what cities have to do, right? The only other thing I wanted to mention, I don't want to put blame on anyone or throw anyone under the bus. The only thing I'd like to say is that we initially knew in May that there was an issue, and then it was kind of silence for a really long time. And so to hear that it's worse and that we didn't do anything is concerning. So hopefully we'll learn from this and it won't happen again. Thank you.
Any other questions? We'll just soften them up for you guys. You don't have anything else? No? Okay. All right. Thank you. We look with very intent eyes at that coming back in October. Which date was it? Just for the listening public?
October 9th?
Will be the first
Study
budget
session?
discussion.
Correct, and then we'll continue that. We can't get through it in one night, and so it'll be continued into the October 16th regular meeting. So we'll have regular items and then finish that portion of the budget discussion.
And then the strategy about how we're going to get through a $3.2 million, that'll be probably the first night. We'll talk about
Yes.
the existing budget. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda, where are we? New business. Nope, that was the new business. AB 18-138, receive and file report on financing the Phase 2 purchase of the former Wayne Golf Course. And we have Mrs. Prokowski. I always mess up your name, I'm sorry.
Except Ms.
Miss, my bad. Ms. Prokowski, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to give you an update on the acquisition of the final piece known as the Phase 2 of the former Wayne Golf Course. So I know the immediate question that's on your mind, which is, what is the Phase 2 purchase? Because it's been a while since I've stood before you to give you an update on this property. As a reminder, in 2016, Forterra purchased the property for buy and hold purposes so that the city had the ability to raise the funds so that this land could ultimately become a park. Last year, the City Council approved the purchase and sale agreements for both what's known as the front 9 and the back 9. And in November and December of last year, we purchased the front 9, which includes that 4-acre active use area. And we also purchased 31.38 of 36.38 acres on the back 9. Those remaining 5 acres, as you can see up on the map in the presentation, is this Phase 2. And so just some details to give you an update as to where we are. So the entire back 9, including these final 5 acres, which we will be purchasing by the end of this calendar year, will have a conservation easement purchased by King County. And the conservation easement will strip the development rights to the land, and that is what lowers the cost for the city. Because we actually purchase it at its open space value. It's taken a lot of work and a lot of dedication by both King County and the City of Bothell, as well as through RCO, and I can't stress how grateful we are to RCO for helping to make this happen for both of us. For making some concessions and really working with us. And so King County is going to be using several different grant sources to purchase the easement. ALEA, PSAR, Surfboard, CFT, and King County Parks Levy. And as a result, passive uses are going to be permitted on the back 9, with the exception of the buffer zones, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. They're going to be shown on the next slide, and those will be dedicated to salmon habitat. As was discussed last year, if the city wishes to have more active uses in this Phase 2 area, we can go through the CFT process to buy back the land in a similar process that any other city would use if they wanted to break part of a conservation easement. So, taking a look at the buffer zones and the trails, the pink, orange, and yellow areas, these are the so-called buffer zones. This is the area on the back 9 that's going to be dedicated to salmon habitat. Again, huge appreciation to RCO for allowing us to move forward with the trail proposal that the city and the county agreed to as part of the PSA on the back 9. And so that sort of teal with neon green line, that's the proposed location for the trail that the county in the future can construct and build and, more importantly, maintain on the property. And then the neon green spot is something that the city could possibly build in the future, and that would be an ADA connection, so a concrete trail to make that connection between Blythe Park and then the proposed trail from King County.
The good news is that we are on track to complete the Phase 2 purchase by December 2018. In terms of process, King County must complete the conservation easement before the city can purchase. They are in their final stages now of putting together the conservation easement and also waiting for the grant agreements from RCO. In December, the city is going to pay for the underlying fee and some carrying costs for the acquisition. Those will come from park impact fees, one of those proprietary funds that the city manager spoke of in the last presentation. And that total cost is going to be approximately $51,000. And so that is my update for you this evening. Staff's recommendation is that you receive and file this report, and I can answer any questions on both the city side as well as the county side.
Questions? I'll go first. Thank you. I was shocked when the city manager told me that the RCO made concessions about existing grant funds and everything else to make this happen. So that's
It was actually pretty incredible. We actually got to the point of RCO wanted us to go back and change some language that required an act of Congress. And we said, nope, that's not going to happen in this political climate. And incredibly, incredibly grateful to Kayleen Cottingham, who runs that division of RCO, for her flexibility and her willingness to be open and work with all of us to make this happen.
And how much, do we have an estimate or a rough ballpark of how much the city would be paying for this Phase 2 of the back nine?
So the city's contribution is $51,000. The county's contribution is just about $3.3 million. And so they've done a really heavy lift. Some of the grants that I referenced, as you may recall from last year, were originally the city's. Through conversations with the county, we worked on transferring those grants to them. And so it's really become a win-win for all of us.
And then with the Phase 2 area, we were talking about trying to at least hold down some hopes in the future to maybe develop a ball field or some sort of more active use instead of it being all passive. So what does that look like at this point as a likely outcome?
So the way that the conservation easement is going to be drafted is that we are going to use CFT, the King County Conservation Futures, on that particular section of the land. And then if in the future we wanted to try and convert that to active, we could approach the CFT committee. They actually use the future dollars. And so we could then either buy it at that future dollar rate or I don't know how we would possibly do this, but we could also swap land. And so that's the way that would occur in the future.
So we'll be paying whatever, let's say we did 20 years from now, we'll be paying the value of that property for open space, or is it for back to a developable space?
For developable space.
Oh, so they're going to make some money off of us.
Yes, they will.
Okay. And since we just had a fantastic conversation about the budget, where's the $51,000 coming from? It's not the general fund. It's not the general fund reserve.
Park impact fees.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. And that fund is fine. Good. It has $51,000 in it. Okay. Got me nervous. Any other questions? Councilmember Zorns? Sure.
Tracy, having, sat in the comfort of my own home, watching this process, and now sitting here from the comfort of the dais, I just have to thank you personally and your supporting staff, because if you didn't lose sleep at night as this was coming together, I don't know how you did it, because that was a huge undertaking.
Well, thank you. I'm lucky enough to have a really fantastic partner in King County.
But it's just jaw-dropping to see what the final product is in this park. So kudos and thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
I was going to say something very similar. I sat in a lot of meetings with, I forget what we called it, the Wayne Golf Course Committee. You came here and we threw you into this project, literally. I don't know if you slept for the first half year you were here. You were always gracious, and I know you worked your butt off to make this happen. That's one of the nice things on being on council. You can make decisions and someone else has to do all the work. So I know that I'm speaking for everyone when I say thank you very much for all your hard work and everyone else that made this possible. I'm kind of shocked there are only one Bothell people here, but I guess they trust us and they knew it was going to happen. So I think it's something to celebrate, and I think I know my kids and their kids will be grateful for many years.
Councilmember McNeil.
You know, I'd have to say something, even though I'm under the weather a little bit, but I want to say thank you also for all the hard work that you put in, all the hard work the city has put in, King County, the state of Washington. The list goes on and on. I could even say that Snohomish County has played a little bit of a part of this as well. But it's been a long journey, and looking back, seems like forever ago. This process was started, to me, it feels like it was started 30 years ago when King County first acquired the piece of the front nine. So I want to thank you on behalf of, my family, friends, City of Bothell, staff, everybody who worked so hard on this project. We will look back, 30 years from now, future generations will look back and say, wow, they could see the future and they did something very special. The excitement for me is looking forward to the naming process and what Wayne will become. So thank you very much again for all your hard work.
Councilmember Agnew.
Well, I guess I have to say, nicely done. This has been a great process. I don't know if you can, I live across from Wayne, and I look there every day, and I see people riding bikes, walking their dogs, sometimes with leashes, sometimes without, playing with their kids, running, jogging, just enjoying it. And this is going to be great. It's going to be great, like James said, for the future. Long after we're gone, this 89 acres is going to be there for people to use and have fun with. You've done a wonderful job. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Olson.
Yes, great job. When I saw these two topics, the budget report and this park purchase coming up at the same time, I was like, wow, how are we going to make this happen? But so Andy asked the great questions there, that we have some proprietary funds that are in good shape that are specifically for this purpose. So we have those funds so we can make this purchase, and thank goodness, because we have a lot of heavy lifting in the future here. So I'm glad King County was an excellent partner, and wow, that was a lot of funds that they put into this. Part of it were our grants, but thank you for all your effort and hard work in making all that happen.
Do we need to take action, or are we just briefing, right? It's just a briefing, so we're not actually doing the thing today. So you're going to come back and we got to do this again here in a little bit, right? So you're going to be back before the end of the year?
So this actually doesn't have to come before council again, except to celebrate when the land is finally closed.
Oh, that'll be fun. I'm double dipping, so you guys call point of order if you'd like. But before you were here, we could not get a map produced of like what pieces of property were going to be paid for which grant. And so I just wanted the public to know that it was you that came into the mix and just said, well, wait a second, you guys, let's try to get this on paper. And because there were so many people trying to do so many different things and so many different grants coming in and out of the thing, and you just straightened us all out, got us all in the seats on the bus and started driving down the road. So I just really appreciate you doing that. You saved us. I know you saved us a whole big, ugly mess. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, that's the end of that one. So now we got to go hang out with the attorneys on potential litigation matters pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1I for approximately an hour, hour and a half.
If you wanted to take a 10-minute recess, I will endeavor to get it done before 9 o'clock. So it'd be 50 minutes.
Okay, so do we anticipate coming back to the dais at 9? Okay, so we don't anticipate coming back. We're going to be in executive session starting 10 minutes from now, and then we'll be in there till 9 o'clock.